Greetings, comrades, and welcome to the Eastern Border. As you can probably hear from my tone, I have finally had some sleep in my own bed, which is amazing. However, sadly, they somehow cut off my water supply while I was gone, so that's a bit bad. But, however, we'll turn to the daily news, and we actually have quite a lot to talk about today, both on the military front and otherwise. This morning started with President Volodymyr Zelensky admitting that he's ready to discuss the situation with Putin, but he specifically stated that he will not accept Russian position and he will not capitulate to Russia in this. And although on Thursday there was a meeting in Ankara between the foreign ministers of Ukraine and Russia, yeah, that didn't change anything, and Ukraine wasn't really optimistic at the beginning anyways. And they commented that, yes, it's a good thing that both of these ministers talked, but obviously Ukraine understands that it's not Lavrov who takes up these decisions. And talking about Lavrov, Lavrov's been busy spreading out the weirdest things. I mean, yesterday he managed to even state that Russia has never attacked Ukraine and everything. And it seems weird and super strange propaganda here, but there's a small kernel of truth to this. Because Viktor Shenderovich, one of the Russian journalists that I listen to, because these sources are important, he stated that when asked by Deutsche Welle that Russian people would definitely hate a war with Ukraine, but currently a lot of them believe that this is not a war with Ukraine. They are buying into Kremlin's propaganda about the fact that that this is just a denazification operation. They haven't felt the sanctions that much, and Russia seriously hides the casualty rates. However, the Ministry of Defense, again, defense in air quotes, of Russia, which is basically vore v zakonie, they posted today that Russia is actually using their conscripts in this military affair, which is important because Putin himself 2 days ago stated that there would be no conscripts whatsoever. So again, there's a nice little argument towards this whole situation about what's happening there. And this usage of conscripts is interesting because, I reported at the beginning of this war that Russia is basically forcing conscripts to become enlisted soldiers, by the end of their contracts and with threats of violence and everything. But in total, the Combat Intelligence Group reports that Russia had concentrated about 180,000 people on the borders, and that they predict that if they actually would want to capture all the cities, then they would need about 1 million. So it's not going so well, and the morale is low, because the professional soldiers at the beginning, yeah, sure, they were strong and kind of, motivated, but now the Russian society is kind of starting to disbelieve the myths about their military might. It went so far as various people, even on grand propaganda show, really just continued to appear and just still state that maybe this was a mistake and everything. I mean, we're talking about people who have their own personal yachts and whatever. And there was this nice little argument here that I heard that stated that probably Putin wouldn't want to nuke his own, the places where his kids are and where his money is and where all the yachts and rich stuff of the oligarchs are. Where all of the kids and whatever of their second families go. And talking about second families, now I probably should have mentioned that earlier because there are many interesting people living abroad from Russia. One of them, by the way, is one Polina Kovalyova. Polina Kovalyova is a 26-year-old glamorous Russian girl, and she posts in Instagram, because they always post on Instagram, in a huge apartment in Kensington. And she's the stepdaughter of that Mr. Lavrov. He's one of Putin's closest allies. He's talking head and, well, now also a war criminal. And that's an interesting fact because Putin's cronies often have two families at the same time. Putin himself, while being married to Ludmila Putina, which is way back in episode 21, she actually, after their divorce, he stated that Putin might actually be dead and he might have body doubles. That's after that episode my actual problems with the Russian trolls started. Anyway, a lot of them, even Putin himself, had a second family with former gymnast Alina Kabayeva. She's still hiding in Switzerland, by the way, and one of the Russian opposition channels, which is led by, weirdly enough, and a priest, a Catholic priest that lives in Italy, because he was a Catholic and then he wanted to do a seminary work or something. He runs a channel. His name's Klirik. He actually burned his Russian passport and wants nothing to do with Russia anymore. I hope Italy gives him residency because he's just there on a visa, and I hope that something can happen to him. But he started a petition to throw Kabayev out of Switzerland on the internet. And this is the thing. Lavrov has had the official wife for the past 50 years. Because again, two families for everyone. They're extremely decadent people. And no one so far has heard of her or seen her or seen them together in public in like forever. As opposed to his second wife, his mistress Svetlana Polyakova. She's basically the actual new wife, and they've been together since the early 2000s. And unlike Lavrov's official wife, this lady, Polyakova, is totally mega rich. She bought an apartment in Moscow worth about $6 million. And this is crazy. She's also unemployed. Svetlana also accompanies Lavrov on every official foreign affairs trip. Sometimes she even takes her 78-year-old mom and her niece. The whole family are listed as the members of Diplomatic Mission. Diplomatic Mission, by the way, which in the past has used their diplomatic ties to sell stolen bicycles, which happened in Berlin. And in Argentina, they used diplomatic mail to smuggle in cocaine with Единая Россия, the United Russia Party logos on it. Just remember, Russian embassies have caused a lot of issues and criminal stuff, basically. And Polyakova, Lavrov's mistress, has used the Ministry of Foreign Affairs plane more than 60 times. And basically, this Polina is her daughter from a previous marriage. And this is just crazy, because Polina's mom and Lavrov have been together for around 2 decades now. Polina's biological dad, by the way, isn't super rich. And, she doesn't have an oligarch husband herself, Mr. Polina. But at the age of 21, she bought an apartment in London on Kensington High Street for £4.4 million. Oh, and she paid cash. No mortgage. £4.4 million. And her unemployed mom and everything, no official ties anywhere. And yeah, let me remind you that Mr. Lavrov, whose second family is doing all this stuff, accused the United Kingdom of using the chemical weapons twice. First time he claimed the United Kingdom staged the Salisbury poisoning. And more recently, he has publicly accused Navalny's supporters of poisoning Navalny himself with Novichok at the request of the British Secret Services. He's also given numerous speeches about the evil Anglo-Saxon world and the awful liberal Western countries who want to destroy Russia and Ukraine. So, let me ask you this. Why does his stepdaughter live in the center of London, then? This is the point of hypocrisy. I mean, they all like to talk about the whole situation, how they hate the West, but here's a nice example how they are basically absolute hypocrites. Oh, and talking about that Instagram, that is big in Russia. Extremely big. And now it's gone. Also, on YouTube, I have to say that my best enemy, Igor Girkin, has been banned from YouTube because YouTube has now just deleted all the possible kind of sources of Russian propaganda. That puts me in a bit of a problem. And hey, Latvian Special Services, I know that you're listening to this. I might have to look at Yandex Efir now, basically Russian YouTube analog or something. The problem is it's technically illegal to be watching Solovyov's shows because that thing is, well, illegal in Latvia to basically cut off our people from brutal brainwashing and propaganda, but I need to watch them for work. So, hey, State Security Bureau, this is the evidence that I'm basically telling you, please don't arrest me, because I will have to dig through that mess and translate this. Just saying, okay? Thank you. We got this. Meanwhile, in Russia, with everything, besides the fact that they're also gathering more Syrian troops, because like I said, they used up their forces in Russia, all those 180,000 people, and now they have to gather things. Interestingly enough, seems that they are taking away their so-called peacekeepers from Karabakh, If you remember, that conflict was between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and they had a fight, and it ended up with Azerbaijan winning and taking large chunks of Karabakh because Russia stepped in and threatened, that they'll deal with the situation, and then they had a bit of issue with Turkey. And then they're also pulling away some tiny bits from Syria and other places where they've been stationed. So currently they're trying to use mercs, and they're basically trying to get their existing reserves there. However, this conflict intelligence team is very worried that actually Azerbaijan, as having seen that that Russia probably won't be stepping in anywhere, that it's under sanctions and everything, could right now actually just go in Nagorno-Karabakh, and finish the job, so to speak. That would be issues with Armenia, but that would be a lesser crisis than what Putin is doing. And with support from Turkey, that also caused the thing, because Igor Girkin, when I also made this show a while back, it was called Igor Girkin's Hot Takes, he also stated that if Russia is going to, delay or start lagging, then other countries might, take a punch of it. So they are seriously worried that Azerbaijan might annex all of Karabakh, and that also Japan, whose prime minister has once again, after many years, never publicly mentioning, Japan's prime minister has stated that Southern Kurils are basically Japanese core territory. Just a little nudge here, just a diplomatic nudge and change of tone, but that means a lot for Japan. So Japan's eyeing the situation. They actually might even go to Kurils, and like I always say on this show, people in Kurils, they'll be happy to join Japan. I'm waiting until people in Karelia start petitions joining Finland, because Russia has taken away chunks from everyone. Hell, Estonians might try to grab the other side of Narva. And even us Latvians have a bit of claim on them, which we had to sign off to join NATO. But we do, because there is a whole district which was ours according to the 1922 peace treaty with the Soviet Union. And then the Soviet Union basically grabbed it and added it to Russia because it held an important strategic railway central. And I bet Lithuanians have the same thing, and we're not even talking about Georgians. So this could get interesting if Azerbaijan, which is the most likely country to start this whole situation, would get in, because Putin is, he's waging war of attrition. And although they've lost about 12,000 people, according to Ukrainian forces, and I think that includes all casualties because we really can't confirm anything. But seems so that currently, because of all the logistical situation and everything, the Ukrainian army is on about equal positions with Russia. Slightly below Russian potential, because Russia still has immense manpower and immense manpower and logistical advantage, although their tanks are stalling. And with everything, don't be too optimistic. Everything that Ukraine is doing and heroically defending has just moved them from the complete underdog positions to the positions where they're almost equal. And what you don't see are the Ukrainian casualties, which are basically less than Russia's, but approximately half of Russia's casualties, sort of, give or take. That's what the experts are saying, and that's the whole thing. Ukraine in general didn't have such a large army as Russia, so in a war of attrition, Russia could win, unless their economy pops off and weird things might happen. So, like I said, Azerbaijan could maybe do something. We can't predict this situation, but everyone's predicting currently that this war will probably be a long one. It's going to be a new Afghanistan because the population is utterly hostile. Meanwhile, also another big fear that Igor Girkin mentioned is the fact that Poland could enter Ukraine to basically protect their own interests and population because of all the historical Polish population there. And then Ukrainians would sort of surrender, and they would basically stand on the front lines together. That's a very unrealistic scenario, but Russian pro-war people really support this idea, which seems insane to me. Meanwhile, the amount of refugees from Ukraine tragically reached 2.5 million from Ukraine, and there is an estimate about 2 people million being displaced inside Ukraine. One thing, though, also about the bad news is that I would buy some flour if I was you, because the wheat prices are going to increase, and that's going to be just utterly crazy. The humanitarian corridors are still being bombed, and everything's kind of crazy. Yeah, about the bombing in Mariupol, about the hospital. Yeah, Russians bullied one of the women there, Mariana, on Instagram, because she was an Instagram blogger previously, and they said, oh, it's just a life like makeup and nothing, because obviously Instagram models who have been in Mariupol, they were in the hospital, yeah, they can't get pregnant. And she actually, gave birth now. This is just weird. Which is just crazy. Also, another important thing is that Kazakhstan, which is considered a trustful ally, has decided not to help Russia, has decided to send some help to Ukraine, which is also interesting. And then we heard some interesting stuff. One of them was that Ukraine reported that Vladimir Putin, Ukrainian intelligence reports that Vladimir Putin had ordered to create an act of terrorism in Chernobyl, and they'll make it look like a provocation. I actually don't know about the legitimacy of that, because that would just be insane. I mean, even for Putin. But then again, what do I know? But probably this is, they are leaking this and reporting this because, as previously we've seen from the beginning of this war, if it gets leaked, then it turns out that that the Russians don't do it. However, one thing they did, and which was confirmed, is that from Russian territory, from Russian ally Belarus, basically planes flew in Ukraine, then they turned around, and then they bombed a city and caused fires there inside Belarus. And my sources basically stated that this is just before Putin's talks with Lukashenko about how Ukraine is going to attack Belarus to basically drag Belarus inside the war. And that was supposed to happen an hour ago when they would officially go there. But I think Lukashenko is in a lot of trouble there since he basically has a lot of issues, because we've heard reports about his soldiers refusing to go to Ukraine and his higher-ups basically resigning. And if you remember the protests in Belarus, yeah, probably not easy or nice there. So that's just weird. Russians had also slightly advanced, just a bit advanced to towards Kyiv, and they're gathering their forces and stuff. But in other fronts, they tried to fully surround Mariupol and move forward in Lugansk and Donetsk, and they could achieve some tactical successes in the eastern flank. But the northern flank and everything else looks pretty strong, because in Luhansk and Donetsk, Ukrainian forces are really powerful. The Ukrainians are weakest in their southern flank, which provides some issues. But like I said, I think that Ukrainians are actually holding back for a counterattack, which is an interesting thought. But hey, I'm just a journalist and a historian. I'm not a military strategist. Meanwhile, Russians also basically kidnapped the Ukrainian mayor from Melitopol. His name was Ivan Fyodorov, and they literally grabbed him on the street. And and they just stuffed a plastic bag on his head and drove him away. This Melitopol city was controlled by Russia since the March 1st, but they still had massive protest actions. Meanwhile, it was just really weird. Volnovakh was taken also by Russians, but in other cities, well, yeah, the difficulties still continue, and doesn't really look that nice. At the same time, besides the fact that Russia was looking for nukes in Ukraine, now they're looking for biological weapons, and such glorious statements from Russian Ministry of Defense, quote, "The United States is training migratory birds to migrate from Ukraine to Russia and distribute bacteriological weapons." Not kidding. That stalled, by the way, 64-kilometer long Russian convoy near Kyiv was largely dispersed or destroyed and whatever, which is crazy. So that's good, so they won't get biological weapons. Interestingly enough, also, is another thing about the bioweapons. Sorry if this is kind of spread out, but I have a bunch of notes here. One goal of United States biolabs in Ukraine was to create bioagents that can target certain ethnic groups. This comes after it was revealed that USA was gathering Slavic DNA through Ukraine. This is insane on so many levels that I don't even know how to refute this utter idiocy. First of all, yes, there were some biolabs in Ukraine. You know what they were doing? Research about epidemiological data, just like every biolab ever. Yes, they were used to create biological weapons in Soviet era. You know why they shifted and why they still exist? Because they were given American money. Specifically so they wouldn't produce biological weapons. Oh, and they're also very open, and you can see them on the internet because they've been operating since forever. And they've been monitored by international observers, by everyone, constantly, on this very reason. So, yeah. Also, interestingly enough, target certain ethnic groups. But Putin states that Ukrainians and Russians are one people, and they're both certainly Slavic. So, where would Ukraine drop a bomb that with things that would kill them? Very, very strange. I mean, if Ukraine makes a biological weapon that kills Slavs, then what are they going to kill themselves? And it's just ridiculous. Meanwhile, Russia itself is probably also yelling that Ukraine might use chemical weapons, and Russia does have its own chemical weapons. They have chemical weapons which have been used by Assad in Syria, on kids no less, and these we're talking about asphyxiating gas bombs which can be dropped on civilians. So that's just interesting. Also, finally, for today, Putin appears to be unhappy with the FSB work in Ukraine. Apparently, he attacked the 5 service members from the FSB's foreign intelligence brand, and Sergei Besheda, head of the service, and his deputy Boluch, they both were placed under house arrest, according to some inside sources. And finally, well, Russian Senator Andrei Klishis promised that everyday users of Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, all of them blocked in Russia at this point, will not be considered extremists in Russia. Knowing Russia's previous history with these promises, I would be especially worried right now. Just saying. Anyway, thank you for this, and I hope that this is less ranty and that will continue this way. I'll be going on a tiny vacation, just a few days away, in a long-planned one. I posted that on Twitter. I'll be in Rome for a few days. I'll be still carrying my work with me, and just that, I really want to see Rome, finally. I'm a historian. I haven't been to Rome. What kind of historian am I? So, I'll be posting less, and the updates from there will be much shorter. But when I return, I'll make a larger one and send it to Anette so that you can get the theme song and everything going. And everyone, I hope, will be happy. Because happiness is mandatory. До свидания, товарищи.